Hey everyone, it's Zach with Palantir Research. AIPCon 2 is coming up next week on September 14th, and we've got a bunch of keynote speakers, some who've presented before, but also those who haven't. In the PR, they note more than 30 organizations will be showcasing how they use Palantir's AIP platform. Now, not all 30 will be live streamed, of course, so I'll go over briefly on the main keynote speakers and their current business with Palantir. But there are also workshops, which are probably much more valuable, to be honest, to actually drive business. So it'll be interesting to see here. And right now, they're flexing that AIP is already being used by more than 100 organizations. And that's ranging from energy to finance, hospitals and healthcare, to even hospitality. And down below too are those additional clients there. Those are workshop presenters, some big names like the New York Stock Exchange, Cone Health, and Genpact that they named specifically. As I said, these are probably more valuable for prospective customers because there isn't that added pressure of being a more widespread message for the live stream, but rather as a workshop, like as I mentioned, that's more interactive there. So they're going to really be able to go back and forth and get their questions answered. This also gives a really good chance for those prospective clients to ask their deep and specific questions. And in addition to that, I'm sure there's some Palantir employees as well. They're going to help make sure that these questions get answered as well in the context of these workshops. And in addition to the usual speakers like Alex Karp and Shyam Sankar, they'll be having Ted Mabry, their head of global commercial, speak too, which I think a lot of folks will be interested in, like ourselves as retail investors, because we're going to be hearing from him concerning we're wanting to hear that commercial perspective in detail. And he also has been at Palantir for over 13 years, so that's there too. Now, the main keynote speakers are as follows. First, we've got CPKC, or Canadian Pacific Kansas City Railroad Company, which has its stock valued at around a $98 billion, Canadian dollar by market cap. They run a North American rail network between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. So either way, I think this will be a great example for AIPCon to see how a high-expense, low-growth business like railways can leverage artificial intelligence and squeeze out that margin there. For Palantir, this is kind of the bread of butter and the type of sprawling large business where they can find the fat and cut it, so it'll be interesting there. Next, we got HCA Healthcare. So those who watched the last AIPCon know they already presented. So I'm really hoping they will be doing some new stuff here during their presentation, which I would imagine they do so. They are a massive $74 billion market cap company, and they are a private provider for healthcare services, such as running hospitals and clinics. So I made a video actually on their last presentation in more detail. So feel free to check that out. But you already know my thoughts too on healthcare overall, and it's probably the biggest opportunity for Palantir alongside their military arm. And that's not only in the United States, but also abroad. I believe if they can continue to penetrate this industry, they'll be able to insert themselves into a sprawling network not only on the provider side, but as we've already seen in medical supplies, logistics, and drug discovery, to name a few. Then we've got Sintra here, who's owned by Ferrovial SE, and they are based out of Austin, and they do management of highways and transportation infrastructure. They work with the construction arm of their own company, Ferrovial Construction, and do the management of the projects to ensure everything runs smooth before, during, and after with the maintenance of the constructed projects. So they aren't necessarily building it themselves here in that arm, but are doing the planning and management side of that in that aspect. So I can see AIP being very useful for them and taking all these different variables into account that can affect timelines, the costs and coordination, logistics, and just make sure all these moving parts into these huge construction projects actually work out. So then next we have Eaton. So they're also big as well, $94 billion power management company. And we've seen a lot of presenters before handling utilities. So naturally someone like Eaton would be a good usage of Palantir as well. They are everywhere in regards to power, from solar to hydro, as well as traditional resources used. This will not only be a great example of saving money, but also a possible use case in the future at least of carbon emissions tracking down the line, which I made a video on recently on the Agora product. So if they were to use that in the future, I wouldn't be surprised. Then the next one I'm most excited for is for Sompo Japan. They are the main partner in Japan that is allowing Palantir to start their business out there as a joint venture. So Sompo is a huge holding company, and they mainly brought in Palantir for their insurance arm and their sales force. They've even mentioned Palantir in a previous earnings presentation and also did a whole video trailer here regarding their nursing homes for the elderly. And that's a big deal in Japan. Sompo is a huge opportunity for Palantir overall because they are an international commercial client in the region of Asia and building strong relations there, of course, as an ally to the United States militarily. And that can bring a lot of revenue later on into the future, of course, if Palantir can get a hand in that. Now, I've done multiple videos on them as well and the kind of results they've seen with using Palantir, so I'm glad that they are presenting one here at AIPCon too, because they are an international client, of course, but also they've been ingrained with Palantir with that joint venture here. So it's only natural to see what a mature partnership looks like, akin to the Jacobs one that we've seen a lot already. And last but not least is Miller's Ale House. From what I can find, they are a restaurant bar chain that sells typical American food. This is a kind of customer we have not really heard about in press releases or previous convention presentations. I think it'll be a good start to see how Palantir can be used on these less abstract businesses here. It's much more straightforward in the food business, not saying it's simple, which I think is a huge marketing opportunity too for Palantir, because we all know restaurants, and it's an example of everyone that they can relate to, or at least on the front-facing end here. Now, I may be oversimplifying it, of course, since it's a chain. They got to deal with the logistics and financing here when it comes to scale and to the food pricing and planning that, but it's still vastly different business here that we've never seen before from Palantir presented. So these clients will be speaking, and like I mentioned, they will be a way to showcase and spread the word on how AI platform is working for them from Palantir. Sometimes clients are hesitant because they really just don't know what to do with a product like this, even though it's obvious they need a product like it to help their organization and streamline it. Since it's so early in the artificial intelligence market, education is a big part of the selling process because you can have the fanciest and best performing tool in the business, but if it doesn't translate to be applied to the business that you can see, or at least to some folks in handling the tech, it's going to be a tough sale there. And as the market overall matures for AI, this will most likely go away, of course, as more and more people get experience with it and get used to it and have worked with it at other companies. But that's still a long time from now, in my opinion. Plus, with a quarter ending soon too, at the end of September, I'm not sure if there's going to be much financial impact here from this AIPCon, so it's still possible for some stuff to show up in the latter half of this month since the Q3 financials are going to be there. But for the customer account, I'm not really going to bank on it until Q4. But if it is a big success, we can hope to see that jump there, but that's just my speculation, and it really depends on the execution from Palantir, and I'll be watching closely for that. And the main advantage of this being a second event for AIPCon is that I think the bar was pretty much set from the first AIPCon, at least at a baseline level, because it happened so soon after AIP was released. Now that there has been some time, I think expectations are slightly higher, and the best benchmark honestly will be HCA, because they've just presented before. So if there is significant progress for that customer, that will look good for Palantir and AIP. And selfishly, of course, as an investor, we'll have the documentation and videos from both AIPcons to compare them. So what are your thoughts, though, on these customers presenting? Anyone in particular you want to see the most? For me, it was Sompo. Let me know below, and thank you all, and my channel members, for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.